I warmly welcome you to the Manifested e-learning platform. Today we continue with the subject auditing and assurance. We are going to study the safe custody and retention of working papers. These are two things: safe custody and retention of working papers. Now, safe custody and retention of working papers are very critical aspects of the audit practice, which ensures the integrity, confidentiality, and also accessibility of audit documentation over time. These two are governed by professional standards, legal requirements, and also the audit firm's internal policies. We begin with the safe custody. Safe custody. What do we mean by safe custody? Safe custody. What do we mean by safe custody of working papers? Safe custody of working papers refers to the measures that are taken to protect working papers from unauthorized access, from alteration, from loss, and also damage. So, safe custody refers to the measures that the audit firm takes in order to secure the audit documentation. And this is essential for maintaining confidentiality, preserving evidence, and also complying with professional ethics. And there are various key aspects, candidates, of safe custody. This may also be attained through physical security. Security. Now, working papers, candidates, refers to the audit documentation. The auditor, in the process of carrying out his work, may have some documents, and these documents you are referring to as working papers. These working papers require physical security, and this is for the hard copies. If an auditor has hard copies of working papers, then such working papers require physical security. These are physical working papers, okay? So, to physically secure working papers, the auditor need to have locked cabinets. We may have locked cabinets or rooms. You don't just keep the audit documentation lying loosely. No, they have to be locked in a cabin, locked in filing cabinets, in locked rooms, secure rooms, or even off-site secure storage facilities. So this can be locked away from the audit firm's physical location, off-site. Number 2, restricted access. Even after locking these physical hard copies in cabinets or rooms, there ought to be restricted access. This means limited access to storage areas to authorized personnel only. 3, we have fire/water protection. The physical copies should be protected from fire, from water. The auditor should ensure storage facilities offer protection against fire, against water damage, and also other environmental hazards. So, fire, water protection. That's another aspect of physical security. Then, of course, there is a disposal. Disposal. Now, disposal means having secure shredding or destruction of hard copies after their retention period. We know, candidates, will be studying that in a short while. These working papers there are times when they ought to be disposed because of the expiry of the retention period. So when disposing these working papers, they ought to be care, all right, and they should be disposed. Okay, ensuring that information cannot be retrieved. When disposing these hard copies, the auditor should ensure that they are properly shredded so that they cannot be retrieved in future. That's another aspect of physical security. So these are hard copies. So working papers can be in form of hard copies. Working papers can also be in digital format or electronic. There is also digital or electronic security or protection. Now, to secure digital working papers, or what sometimes can be referred to as soft copies, there are various ways in which soft copies can be secured. One is through password protection. Password protection, because hard copies are always maintained in gadgets like phones, computers, and so on. So it's important to implement strong and also regularly changed passwords for electronic files and systems. 2, controls. There should be controls when it comes to accessing the computers or electronic gadgets. There should be restricted access to electronic files based on user roles, based on permission. For example, certain files should be made available to the audit team members, and reviewers can also access specific client files. Access controls. 3, encryption. Encryption. This file should also be encrypted. You understand? That is a digital way to secure soft copies. Encrypting sensitive data and entire audit files to protect them during storage and during transmission. That can also be done through firewalls. Firewalls and antivirus protection or software. That means protecting computer systems from unauthorized access and also malicious software. Another aspect of digital electronic soft copies, 5, is regular backups. This file should be regularly backed up. You understand? The organization should do what we call implementation of a robust data backup strategy, including offsite and also cloud backups to prevent data loss due to system failures, due to cyber attacks, or even disasters. The files that are contained in computers should be backed up in the cloud. They should be backed up offsite so that there is no loss of data in case of disaster. In case of disaster, this is anti-software. Okay? Antivirus software. Are you following, candidates? We are studying ways in which working papers can be secured. Safe custody. And we've defined safe custody as a system where the measures are taken to protect working papers from unauthorized access or from alteration or loss or damage. Do you understand? Yes. We can identify a few points under digital electronic software, soft copies, number 6, which is we can identify other points. We've stated password protection, access controls, encryption, firewalls, and antivirus software. There is regular backups and also audit trails. Audit trail. Now, audit trail refers to maintaining logs of who accessed or modified electronic files, when that was done, and what changes were made. That's the meaning of audit trails. In case of any changes that are made on the electronic files, then there ought to be a record of who made the changes, why the changes were made, and so on. That's what we refer to as audit trail. That is also a measure to secure electronic files. 6. Secure cloud storage. Secure cloud storage is another way. Secure cloud storage. Now, if using cloud services, the auditor should ensure the provider meets stringent security and also compliance standards. All right? Yes. Then we can mention, this is number 6. Number 7. Another way, candidates, and you can see there are very many points under digital or electronic files, because nowadays most of these files are digitally stored. So the 7th way is through data loss prevention. Data loss, prevention of data loss. Prevention of data loss. What does that mean? This means implementing tools to prevent sensitive data from leaving the firm's controlled environment. So that's it, candidates, for digital or electronic protection. That is number 2. Number 3, we have what we call confidentiality agreements. Confidentiality agreements. What do we mean by confidentiality agreements? And how are confidentiality agreements important when it comes to safe custody of working papers? Now, here, candidates, the audit firm should ensure that all staff, including temporary staff and contractors, sign confidentiality agreements regarding client information. Anyone who will be dealing with the files of the audit firm should sign an agreement of confidentiality with the audit firm, so that the staff do not leak information or do not breach the laws regarding working papers. Number 4, training is another key aspect of safe custody of working papers. There ought to be regular training of audit staff on data security protocols, on confidentiality principles, and also the importance of protecting client information. Because remember, candidates, the auditor, in the course of carrying out the audit work, may come across very confidential information of the company that is being audited. So the audit firm should ensure that the audit staff is well trained when it comes to matters to do with confidentiality, when it comes to matters to do with the data security protocols, and also the importance of protecting client information. So that's all for the bit on safe custody. We've discussed safe custody. Let's move to retention. Retention of working papers. Retention of working papers. Retention of working papers. Now, first of all, what is retention in respect to working papers? Retention, candidates, here refers to the period for which working papers must be kept by the audit firm. It is the period for which working papers must be kept by the audit firm. It refers to the period working papers by the audit firm. That is the meaning of retention. It is the period working papers must be kept by the audit firm. Earlier we saw that the auditor is the one who has what we call the know over working papers. So the law requires the auditor to maintain these working papers, to keep this working paper, but up to a certain period of time. And this period is determined by the combination of professional standards, legal requirements, and also internal firm policies. So the period that an auditor must keep the working papers is determined by professional standards, by legal requirements, and internal firms policies. So first of all, here we have professional. And here professional standards may vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But we have International Standards 230 on audit documentation, which requires auditors to retain audit documentation for a period sufficient to meet the needs of the engagement and the firm, and also to enable an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the engagement to understand the audit work performed. And while the international standards of auditing don't specify an exact number of years, common practice often aligns with the legal requirements. You understand? Legal requirements. So we have legal and regulatory requirements. Legal and regulatory requirements. Legal and regulatory requirements. So currently we said that the period which the auditor must keep these audit working papers is determined by one, professional standards. The professional standards we've seen may not specifically give the number of years, the exact number of years, but ISA 230 requires auditors to retain working papers for a period sufficient to meet the needs of the engagement and the audit firm. Then we have also legal and regulatory requirements. Many jurisdictions have company laws that specify how long accounting periods and related audit documentation must be kept. Tax authorities may also have their own requirements for retaining records that support tax filings, which may indirectly influence audit documentation retention. Do you understand? So we have, under legal and regulatory requirement, there is the company law. There is also tax law, taxation law, tax law, tax laws. All right? Then there is what we call statutes of limitation. Statutes of limitation. Statutes of limitation. Now, this is the period during which legal claims can be brought. And these are legal claims, e.g. against the auditor for negligence. So retention periods can often extend beyond the statutes of limitations to allow for legal defense. There is industry-specific laws. Industry-specific laws. Now, certain industries like the financial services industry may have specific regulatory bodies that impose stricter or even longer retention requirements. You understand? Yes. Then, so this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. We talked about internal policies. Audit firm policies. These are policies of the audit firm. Audit firms typically establish internal policies for retention that meet or exceed the minimum requirements of professional standards and relevant laws. And this provides a consistent approach across all engagements. And some firms may opt for longer retention periods. as a risk management strategy, even if not explicitly required by laws. So there are laws that may impose a period of 5 years. There are times when it could be 7 years retention period. But the audit firm may have its own policies that may be more strict. That is to mean longer period than the legal requirement. Understand? And that's all candidates for our today's lesson on safe custody and retention of working papers. In this lesson, we have defined safe custody. We've seen ways in which working papers can be kept. We defined safe custody as measures that are taken to protect working papers from damage, from loss, or from unauthorized access. And we have listed various ways. There is a physical security of hard copies, which can be done through locked cabinets and rooms, through restricted access, through fire and water protection and disposal. Then apart from the hard copies, we have also working papers that are in form of soft copies, and this can be secured through password protection, access controls, encryption, firewalls, and also antivirus software, regular backup, audit trails, secure cloud storage, data loss prevention, confidentiality agreements, and also training of the audit staff. In this lesson, we've gone ahead to study the retention of working papers. We've defined what retention means, retention of working papers. And we've seen that retention refers to the period that working papers must be kept by the audit firm. We've learned that this period is determined by professional standards, by legal or regulatory requirements, for example, company law, tax law, statute of limitation, and industry-specific laws. Another way is through audit firm policies. Different audit firms may have their own retention periods which may exceed the legal or regulatory requirements. So that is the end of our today's lesson on safe custody and retention of working papers. And in closing, it's important to note that robust policies and practices for both safe custody and retention of working papers are non-negotiable for audit firms because they underpin the integrity of the audit process. This also protects the auditor and also ensures the long-term reliability and confidentiality of the client information. Thank you for taking time to attend this lesson. Bye-bye.